President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has tasked the European Union with co-creating peace and security initiatives alongside its African partners, anchored on African-led frameworks as a pathway to achieving sustainable stability across the continent. The Nigerian leader, who is represented by Vice President Kashim Shettima, made the call on Monday during the first plenary session on peace, security, governance, and multilateralism at the 7th European Union Summit in Luanda, Angola. For more on this, Professor David Aworawo, Head of the Department, History and Strategic Studies at the University of Lagos, joins us now. Professor Aworawo, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. Two things from my side. First, for you to review this whole idea of peace, progress, and prosperity through multilateralism. How safe is multilateralism at this moment within the global order with all the threats that we face? And secondly, the commentary by the Nigerian representative there, the vice president, representing the president of Nigeria, on the idea of an African framework. Well, we've heard this all the time. Authenticity, the originality in terms of approaching Africa. Well, how healthy is that also? And what are the threats to that proposed African originality in terms of approach?
Thank you. Let me begin with the framework you are trying to put in place, the framework on peace, prosperity, multilateralism. This is not the first time we'll have such initiatives. Over time, especially since after the end of World War II, we have had scores of such initiatives around the world, and some of them have been successful. They have helped to promote peace and stability and development. Some didn't quite achieve the objectives because there was not enough commitment to the initiatives as proposed. So it is a good initiative, especially now that multilateralism is occupying the backstage. The world's most prosperous and strongest country, United States, has a president that is almost disdainful of multilateralism. And that has affected, the global order. So if we have initiatives at other levels that are emphasizing multilateralism, peace, cooperation, and the rest, is welcome. It will keep the momentum of the need for multilateralism to occupy the center stage so that global peace, stability, and development can be achieved. The fact remains that there is no alternative to multilateralism actually, because many of the problems the world faces are not problems that countries on their own individually can solve. For instance, climate change. These are not problems that individual countries can solve. There are problems that you need the global system together, states in the global system to come together to solve. So it's a good initiative, but the test will be in commitment by member states to make it work. If they are committed to it, it will contribute to global peace, security, and prosperity. And then the second issue having to do with all sorts of things that Africa has invoked. In the 1990s and early 2000s, we had the African Renaissance that was promoted by South African President Thabo Mbeki. Before then, we had several other initiatives. We had the new global economic order that was put in place that was supposed to focus on issues affecting the global south and helping them to develop. Those initiatives didn't quite work out fine. Because commitment, was not as expected. After Thabo Mbeki left and President Obasanjo left, all of those very broad and noble ideas that were brought in at the beginning of the 21st century simply disappeared. So again, for the second initiative, it is commitment and sustainability that will determine how much it contributes to Africa's peace, development, and prosperity. We can only wait and see how all of these things are implemented.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor. In addition to the Africa-led solutions to insecurity, the president also intensified his advocacy for an African seat on the UN Security Council with veto-wielding authority. How realistic is this? And, you know, in terms of his call, renewed call for this, we have discussed the importance of this at length. But at this time, do you think it's realistic that this would be considered and moved forward?
Sure, it is realistic. Indeed, the structure of the United Nations as we have it today is anachronistic. The structure was put in place in the immediate post-World War II period in 1945, and the structure of the global system at that time influenced what became, you know, the structure of the United Nations. The Security Council, 15 members, 5 members, permanent seat with veto power, and then the General Assembly and the rest of them. The world has changed a whole lot in the past 70 years, and it is surprising that the UN reforms that, you know, occupied the center stage in the early 2000s haven't quite, you know, been consummated yet. So, yes, the UN needs reform. Africa, of course, has to have a seat, just as South America also has to have a seat. Asia, maybe one more, and the rest of them. So it is not something out of place, and it is realistic. Anytime the UN reforms are carried out, Africa will get one seat. That fact is indisputable. So it is just, you know, stating the obvious. What needs to happen is for the rest of the global community to work fast in reforming the UN, such that, you know, it will be representative, genuinely, of the entire international system. Right now, the 5 countries that were, you know, at an advantage at the end of World War II are the ones that are still dominant till now. I mean, it is surprising that a country like Germany does not have a veto power. It's not a permanent member of United Nations Security Council. You know, and Africa doesn't have, South America does not have. I mean, it is incomprehensible. So, yes, it's a good call, and it will happen. It will happen not in isolated with isolated treatment. It will happen together when the UN reforms comprehensively are carried out and effectively consummated.
All right. I'd like to take us back to African-led solutions, you know, the clamor for it, especially with regards to insecurity. Now, when you look at some of the preferred solutions over time, I always like to make reference to the ECOWAS counter-terrorism force that was proposed. And when they did the math, it costs almost 2.5 billion per year to be able to to create such a force. And my question is centered on 2 platforms. The first is that how will we get funding for these Pan-African, because it seems our issue always comes down to funding. What are your thoughts on how we can fund African-led solutions? And then secondly, what do you think has changed? I think it's symbolic that this meeting is taking place in Luanda because Nigeria was part of the countries that assisted Angola in getting their independence. So if you look back to that colonial era, the post going into independence for most African countries, money moved around. We could finance supporting one another. But suddenly, nations are wealthier but are unable to support one another. So where are we going wrong with regards to pursuing those Pan-African solutions to the several challenges that we all have in common?
Africa has not worked together as cooperatively as one would expect. I've said it several times that the periods when Africa did well at the global stage were periods where African states cooperated, where Pan-Africanism, you know, was at the high level. Unfortunately, now African states are not that close-knit. They are not. The cooperation is not at the level that one expects. But to take the first question regarding West African force and where the funding will come from, security is too important for countries to treat with levity. So countries need to be more committed and make funds available for that project. Then second, the global community too needs to assist. You recall that ISIS that terrorized Iraq and Syria for so many years. In 2014, the global community formed a coalition that worked cooperatively with elements within the elements within Iraq and Syria itself. And it was that cooperation that made them to be able to defeat ISIS a couple of years later. By 2019, ISIS was almost as good as gone. 98% of the territory that ISIS controlled in Syria and Iraq were recovered. And of course, the government was able to take them back. So the point I'm making is that terrorism, insurgency pose threats to the international community. African states need to commit more funds to, and they'll be more committed to fighting these elements that have caused instability. The global community too needs to assist the way they did to defeat ISIS in Iraq and Syria between 2014 and 2019. That is the way forward. If there is that commitment and then the global community gives its support, it should work. And that is actually the only way, because this terrorism and all this, with terrorism and insurgency that we have across West Africa, they operate in one country and run to the other. So it's only through regional cooperation and regional efforts that real success to defeat all of these terrorist groups will achieve positive results.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Aworawo. We seem to have run out of time. Otherwise, I would have loved to ask you about areas of divergence. Two unions, one vision, fine, global prosperity. But there are areas of disagreement which may well as well, come up, either in the issue of sustainability of debt goals or climate change. But we don't seem to have enough time to go into this subject in depth.